Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Ludwig Goransson, the Oscar-winning composer for Black Panther, who returned for the epic and emotional sequel, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Ludwig, the movie and everything about this movie is bigger, and like if the score is just, I've been listening to it a lot since before we were chatting here, and it's so massive in scope, and then you have to compound that obviously with the loss Chadwick Boseman, and I wanted to start actually there in the beginning of the movie. You have this incredible memorial for T'Challa and for Chadwick as well, obviously for the audience, and the piece of music you have for that is just amazing. And I guess can you start talking about how you kind of approach that and like how you kind of went from there to the rest of the score? But I guess starting there with that one track, I just find amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because the first track of the movie is obviously like a callback to the first movie. Um, we have Baba Mal, who was the voice of Wakanda, and he comes back, and you actually see him in the movie now singing. And it's instantly a sound you're familiar with, and that you also place connection with him and T'Challa and Chadwick. So obviously, the first time I read the script, this was years ago, that was a different version of the movie. That was a version where Chadwick was still in the script, T'Challa was still in the script, and at that time I was like, okay, well, I know where we can take this. We have all these themes, we have all these sounds that worked so great. I'm so excited to elaborate on the sound. And then, unfortunately, with the tragic passing of Chadwick, I had to talk. When I talked to Ryan about, like, what are we gonna do? Like, these, because the sounds that the talking drum, the sounds of Bubma's vocals, immediately when you hear it, you start thinking about, you start immediately thinking about the Black Panther, about T'Challa, about Chadwick. So it was very important to have that conversation, to see really where we can, where are we going to put those themes, where can we put those sounds in a place in the movie, so it feels right. And obviously starting the funeral procession was a great way where we could honor that sound. And then eventually later on in the movie, there's also a callback to the talking drum, in a different way.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, and just to follow up on that, obviously, like by the end of the film, you have like it's a full circle kind of moment with T'Challa, and you get like his spoiler alert here, but I mean, we could talk about that with his like son and stuff, and in the credit scene. I guess can you talk about how you kind of tied that back in there at the end, and how you wanted to like make that feel as like a button on the movie because you have this great emotional scene after like so much emotion, and I just found that music there at the end so beautiful as well.
Yeah, and I think something that was different with this movie, that it was a challenge and something I never done before. It was something I really wanted to do. It was something that Ryan Coogler and I have talked about in all of our projects, is how can we create an immersive sound music experience where you can't tell the difference from what song and what score. Everything flows together in a seamless thread. And the only way to do that is obviously if the same person works on both elements. So I started out, as I was starting out the journey on writing the score, I also started out the journey on producing and co-writing the songs together with these incredible artists, and they recorded in Mexico and Lagos, Nigeria. And so, when we write the songs, we use elements from the score, and when we write the score, I use elements from the song. So everything is just kind of embellished and threaded in a way where you don't really feel the difference. Like it's not a needle drop. It's you know a song for something completely else. Like everything, every word, every little line, every instrument, everything was written specifically for the movie and for the scenes. And which obviously makes it for the last final song, the Lift Me Up with Rihanna. You've heard that theme throughout the movie already 4 times, and in very crucial spots. So when you finally hear the full song, you already have a connection to it from the movie.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I love the song. Well, can you? And we'll get back to the music too. But since you brought it up, I want like, well, like, why was Rihanna the best choice for that to sing it? I mean, obviously, I would imagine it's an easy answer, but like, what kind of did you feel like she would bring to it that would like make it even stand out further?
I mean, this movie is about motherhood, and obviously she's an incredible artist, and I never, it's like always like a dream to work with her. But the fact that she hasn't released music in 6 years, I was never really fully expected that she was going to jump on board. But as soon as it's just an odd event of timing. The timing was perfect. She gave birth to um and she saw, after that she saw the movie and she really connected with it, and that's eventually what happened.
You mentioned motherhood, and obviously like the women in this movie are so forward in the story, and from like obviously like Shuri and Ramonda and all the characters are just so prominent. How did that impact your like music writing for the score, I guess? Like how did that factor into like what you were doing, or how did that like different from maybe the first film, which was obviously more male centric because of Black T'Challa and Black Panther and Chadwick in that aspect?
I think if you're listening throughout the whole score, and not as much as if you see the movie, but if you actually listen to the music by itself, I think it's very apparent that it's driven by the female voice. And when you watch it in a movie, there's something that maybe you don't think about, because you're so immersed, in the visuals and in the story. But here, I think the way where we focused driving the musical story through these incredible, powerful female voices throughout the storyline, and that's that was something that I think worked really well. And uh, for example, Shuri's theme, the first time you hear it, it's portrayed by this single line, sung by this melody line that's sung by Georgia Smith, this incredible London artist in London, and you hear it, it's channeling her inner grief, the darkness that she feels inside of her, and she's also Shuri's on this thread between spirituality and technology. So like the voice there in the beginning is like exactly in the middle, and as the theme develops, when she finally, with the help of her technology, takes on the mantle, becomes, spoiler alert, becomes the Panther, right? She's that theme, the vocal theme, transforms into this like distorted synth melody that is like, that also kind of represents the tech side of her character.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love that motif. I think the Georgia Smith, the music is so good. It's just like how, like when you're writing that and coming up with that, like how, I guess, like how does the process work? Are you kind of going like you said, it's like maybe like 4 or 5 notes, right? That like do 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 do, like
Yeah.
don't have to sing, but I was like,
Yeah.
I guess how'd you come up with, like, how do you come up with that, and how do you know that is like going to connect so well with Shuri and be able to be tied so much into the rest of the score?
I started off because we had a theme for her in the first movie, that is very different from today's theme, and that's also because first I was thinking of using the first theme from the first movie, but she's in a different place. She's a woman now. She's in a completely different headspace, and so what I started with here was because of like channeling her, her kind of her, she has this darkness, and this, and also the text side of her. So what I started with when writing that theme was to, I pulled up like this very aggressive synth sound, and I wrote a melody on it, and then I thought that was okay. That's a cool melody, and then I just wrote a bass line to that melody.
You mentioned this, like that you like she had a different theme in the first one. That's another thing that stood out to me listening to this, and like, I mean, the music I think you wrote for the first one, obviously you won an Oscar for it, but it's so memorable, and like people are able to hear those, like that Black Panther theme or whatever they think of as it, and it's just like immediately like, oh, I got it, right? Like I'm in Wakanda and I get this, and I feel like I was going into this, I maybe was like, oh, I'm sure we're gonna hear like, and like you said, there are variations on it, but I was like, you could have easily just repeated a lot of this or like done little differences. It feels like you basically started from scratch on so many different things, and I just was like so impressed by that. It's such a massive undertaking, I guess. Like how much I mean, how much research did you do in like kind of like thinking, like going outside the box? I feel like, again, like this is such a massive score. There's so many different elements. Like, where'd you start on there, and like how did you kind of like work your way into that?
Well, it started off with just the movie's completely different. Obviously it's a sequel, but it's we don't have our guy from the first
Right.
movie. He's not in it anymore, and the storyline, you know, we have these incredible, powerful women in the story, and um, you know, it does it does it just made it for needing different sounds and different themes and different music. Then I can't say more than that. And especially also since we also have a completely different uh, uh, character and culture in this movie, the Namor and the Telecons, which is inspired by Mayan culture. And that's something that I found incredibly fascinating, and started to talk to Ryan about how we could, going to how can we make this sound happen, like how, like what. Obviously I found out that like Mayan culture and Mayan music was erased. It was forcibly erased. So we never know exactly what it sounded like, but there's musical archaeologists in Mexico City that's been working on trying to reimagine this music for their whole career. So of course I went there to record them and to meet with them and to talk to them and just listen to what they've been working on, and hear some of these sounds, because like I said, that we never know what the music exactly sounded like, but these music archaeologists, they found some of the Mayan instruments in the graves. They found flutes, and they can see on the flute holes which intervals were used the most. So you can kind of replicate it, and you can see on the codex and on paintings that in stone that there used to be formations of 5 people playing the turtle shells. So if we have that kind of information, we can kind of, we have the instruments and we know some of the formations. So we started recording some incredible. I came into the studio and there was basically 500 different instruments in front of me that I'd never seen, like these flutes and whistles, and like those is something called a death whistle, which was extremely powerful, and that's like it's like a screaming. It almost sounds like an animal screaming, and that's used all over Namor when he does his action stuff. And then there's a flute called the flute of truth, which is like this almost like a dog whistle. It's like so high pitched, and so if you're in the room with a person playing it, you almost pass out. And that whistle was used to at the time to make people tell the truth. It's almost like torture because it's
Sure.
so loud. And also when the conquistadors came, they came with guns, but the Mayans, they had these, they had flutes, so they like lined up 10 people around these conquistadors and start playing these flutes, so they had to drop their guns. Um, it was also used as a weapon. And then the seashell, which was also obviously in the script. Like Ryan wrote the seashell, the conch in the script, and that is eventually what became the sound of Namor's theme.
Right. That's amazing. And like, so I guess when you're recording, then how do you like mix that all together to get like the Talocan and name like that, those kind of the sounds you want? Like, how much time does that take you guys to like to like kind of execute, I guess?
Yeah, I was there for about 2 weeks and recording. In the daytime I was recording with the music archaeologists, and then in the nighttime I used elements from these recordings and made into songs and into beats, and at nighttime I was recording with contemporary artists. So that's when like Fortikush came by at night, and like we started working on the song that would become Con La Brisa. And then another thing that I really want to do was to record with musicians, or rappers or singers that could also sing in Mayan. There's only about 1 million people left in the world that actually speak Mayan. So I flew to Merida and found this rap community, 3 guys that rap in Mayan. And when they started out 3 years ago, people were kind of laughing at them because they were like, "Why would you rap in Mayan? Like, no one speaks this language anymore." But younger kids loved hearing them rap in Mayan, so they started booking shows and they started like create a little bit of a community. And then when they started making some little bit of money, like the older generation was like, oh, that's cool, like you're rapping in Mayan. And now they have a song, they have a song in Black Panther. You know.
It's awesome. It's really incredible. Like you said, the score and the songs are also good. You mentioned like Ryan. I mean, obviously, like you work so closely with him on these films. What is your collaboration like at this point? And like, kind of like, how has that evolved? I guess for you two.
It's all about, you know, the trust we have for each other. I think, I really, I trust him with this, and he trusts me. He is he he is open to anything, and just to be able to have these creative conversations before they start shooting, and before they, when I read the script and start having, deep creative conversations about this. And it doesn't always have to be about music. It can be about just the script, or about what is going through with the actors, and all the whole process while I'm recording music and while they're shooting. I'm constantly sending it to him. So when I'm in Mexico and I'm recording these Mayan raps, or I'm recording Arboles Arboles, that's the siren song. That would eventually also become the siren song. I send that to him so he can have that and listen to that while he's shooting. And sometimes he shares it with the actors when he's on set. And so it all is such a organic process. It's very special and unique.
Yeah, I love that siren song too. That part is great in the movie, and it's like the music is so awesome when you listen back to it on the score, wherever you're listening to it. I guess last thing here, I know you mentioned like the songs and stuff. One I wanted to ask you about, because it's used so well in the trailer, is the Thames cover of "No Woman, No Cry." I just love it
Yeah.
so much. I don't know if it's actually in the movie itself, but obviously it's on the soundtrack, and then like is in the trailer so prominently. Can you talk about like doing like producing that, and like why why that song, and like how that kind of came together? Because I just love it so much.
Yeah, it was so right after uh Ryan Coogler wrapped shooting the movie. uh, we went to Nigeria together, because like I did the research and like I did recording in Mexico, we also wanted to do that in Africa, and just the opportunity to go together, both of us, was incredible. And Lagos especially is such an interesting place. There's over, 500 uh 500 languages. There's over 350 different tribes, and they all have their own instruments. So like traditional music is, there's so many different instruments, so many different languages, and so many different things to pull up and to record. But also in the contemporary music world, like the Lagos, it's like a melting pot of music. Like with Burna Boy and Thames, like these incredible artists, that they all come from Lagos, and they're getting the voice now out in the whole world. And so it was kind of an obvious place to go to for us. And like I said, the most incredible thing was that we go together. And it was actually on the plane ride from LA to Lagos where Ryan was talking about the trailer, and he was telling me like, what are we gonna use here? What kind of music? And he started brainstorming ideas, mostly song from the 90s. And he was like brainstorming. He was on the flow. He's like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I was like, yeah, yeah. And then I went back to my seat, and he was like quiet for like half an hour. And I thought he was like sleeping or something, but then he came up and he was like, what about No Woman to Cry? And I was like, that's genius. That's such a great. That's I don't think I've ever heard it in a trailer before. And we also had our first session as soon as we landed in Lagos. Our first recording session was with Thames.
Huh.
So I was like, why do we have a woman sing that song? And then Ryan also mentioned the idea of like, there's this bridge in No Woman No Cry. Everything's gonna be all right. We're all gonna be all right. Which kind of is, after that song, it kind of became a universal a rhyme. People, that we're gonna be all right. Everything was used in so many songs in the 90s, and it kind of echoed through different musical generations, with people kind of taking that and doing it their own. And one of the things that Ryan Winston was like, how he got that feeling from the Kendrick song, "We're Gonna Be All Right," and he was like, "Is there any way we can match those songs up?" I was like, of course. So as soon as we landed, we recorded Thames. It's No Woman No Cry is a very difficult song to sing, but you don't think about it because it's so effortless, the way and the lyrics. Just think about the lyrics, like it's genius, and it has a different meaning to it when a man sings it and when a woman sings it,
Mhm.
and she just nailed that performance like effortlessly, and it was incredible. And then I went back to my room and I mashed it up with the Kendrick Lamar song, and then we sent it off to the trailer house. The rest is history.
It's amazing. It's so great. It's honestly like the best trailer I think I've seen in so long. I love that version. And it does have its side of the 90s because obviously the Fugees covered it, right? So like that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking too, which
Yeah.
is great. We have to wrap up here, but Ludwig Goransson, Oscar winner for Black Panther. His score for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, you can listen to now. It's incredible. Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so nice to be with you on this show. So thank you.
Thank you.